Welcome, everybody. Hello, and thank you for being here. This is Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast. I'm Dayal, and I'm here with Achita Gopi and Kishore Chandra, along with our live studio audience, and all of you listening out there in podcast land. Thanks so much for being here. How are we doing this morning, fam?
Amazing.
Amazing.
Yes, renewed and refreshed.
Renewed. That's really good.
It's
I've been
funny, that's
taking
exactly how I felt.
Achita feels renewed and fresh too. Awesome.
Really did.
Lex is feeling very tired over there in the chat. So good for you guys. Um, good. Tell me about being feeling renewed and fresh. What's that like?
It feels great.
I want to know.
I've
I
been
want to
taking
know
I've,
what renewed is.
I've been taking like long baths for the past 3 nights and like getting really into it, like candles and Epsom salt and oils and just like making it a whole thing. And I was like, why don't I do this every night? Like it's amazing. I was just thinking to myself, like, because I always tell myself the excuses that like I don't have time to do this. And I did it 3 nights in a row. And yesterday, especially, I was just like, this doesn't take that much time and it prepares me for bed. And like my eyes aren't on screens and it's amazing. So that's what it's like to feel renewed and refreshed. Feels great.
Epsom salt and candles. What
That's
about
right.
you, Chita?
I'm also not surprised that it's a new moon. Like yesterday, today, it's kind of like this whole. So yeah, I totally not surprised, and I feel like the past few days, it's been like finishing japa at like a really late time and switching my mindset about it. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, and in anxiety, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get to bed, and how am I going to finish all this stuff? Like, I just kind of put it at, I'm like, look, this is what it is, and I'm going to
Mm,
enjoy talking to my friend. Like,
mm,
if I was calling my friend, talking to my friend, it's like, just let me close my eyes, not think about anything else that needs to be done, and just be in this moment. And they often used to say that, like, if you can't chant your rounds like early in the morning, sometimes they're like late at night, because those are the times when everything else is kind of quiet. And I found that my mind would constantly find anxiety to like input, like, oh, but how are you going to function in the morning? And I'm like, I do this all the time. What do you mean, how am I going to function in the morning? And I just had to kind of like change my mindset. And when I did that, it was almost kind of like, bathing in the holy name. See what I did there?
mm. I saw it. Um, I mean, the mind is such a beast. I was thinking about that yesterday. Something that I want to be working on is I mean, we've been talking about a little bit also about reality. In one of the episodes, I gave a title, Be Slow to Assume I Know What's Best for Other People. And the word that was coming to mind was perspective, about how what I see isn't necessarily reality, but my subjective perception of reality. And that we have the power to change that subjective perception of reality. And I think that um, that's what I was hearing as you were sharing that powerful experience of, rather than wishing for the things around me to change, changing the way I see the things around me. And that leads to a completely different experience of life. And I think that the happy people that I know, the people that experience life on a higher frequency the way that I would like to, are people that choose to see things in a certain way and to choose to have a certain outlook and a certain mindset. And it's a practice. It's not easy. It's a total practice. And so thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. I feel like crap. I'm terrible. I'm not doing great. I'm just joking.
That was going to be my question. How are you?
I'm at a low point. I'm at a rock bottom. I took a cold shower last night and went to sleep with lots of anxiety. just just joking before I get all the emails. Just trying to be funny. So where are we at this morning? Where are we going? Are we gonna talk about perspective? We got something else on tap?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few things, and from yesterday, I want to see if after this, short story portion, if we can talk more a little bit about yesterday in the comments. There was a comment and it was saying yes.
Hmm.
It was saying right, respond versus like react. It's like respond and don't react, and I've seen that so much in today's like self awareness lingo. It's become this
Hmm.
phrase. And I just kind of want to talk a little bit also about like what that actually means. What does that mean? Because for me, just as an English major, the react actually makes sense. I've acted, I'm going to act again. I've reacted. I've acted and then reacted to what someone else has done. What is a spond? I have no,
Hmm.
how do I respond? What is the spond?
Hmm.
But I kind of want to just figure out like, like what does that mean for us really? Because sometimes we have these phrases and they become good phrases. And it's like, yeah, that's good. I'm like, what's that mean? And I like also doing that with spiritual concepts. When we hear things in Bhagavad Gita and we're like, oh, that's a cool line. And then you rattle off that line, it's like, it is lust only, Arjuna, which conquers the senses and makes a mind, like a man go forth as if forced to act. I'm like, yeah, great. What's that mean? What does that really mean?
What did I just say?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, it sounds great when you memorize it because Krishna is poetic and wonderful. But then I'm like, but what does that actually mean when we're in the trenches of it? So I kind of just want to talk about that after, and it'll lead into the story as well. And Kishore was like, I have ideas right now.
Yeah.
Well, I just looked up the etymology for respond because my English, like, not major but minor brain, like really needed to know immediately. And apparently spondere is to pledge, Latin, and re is again, so it means to pledge again.
So now,
I,
see, this isn't that like it's a little bit different. Like, when you think about it in terms of these circumstances, and everybody always applies it to when they're angry. Right? Everybody's always like, oh, when somebody says something and it gets you all riled up, it's like respond, don't react. And I'm like, well, but what are we pledging to in that moment? We've been talking a lot about vows and pledges and what our word means. It's like, but what are we pledging to? And what had you previously pledged? Because sometimes you hadn't. I don't know the person. They're not in my life. What is it that so am I responding to what somebody else has thought of me, like they're coming in with a preconceived idea of this is what I'm expecting from them, this is the contract of this interaction, right? If we talk about pledges, this is a contract of this interaction. Sometimes it's like, but you don't even know me, like, oh, you haven't even taken the time to get to know me. How can this be the contract of our interaction?
And yesterday we were talking about values, and I feel like that kind of fits in here too, because it's like when we don't think about the reality, or maybe not the reality is the right word, but like the the depth of the words that we're using, like we don't really understand what we're saying. Like I agree with you so much, the truth is some days I'm just like, I just don't want to speak because nothing means anything anymore. And if it's really about like pledging, like reigniting my pledge, it's like, how, the question that comes to my mind is like, how often am I speaking with people about what my values are and what my pledges are and what like my real internal stuff is? It's like it's not happening that often. So when I'm being told to respond versus reacting, I feel like the respond is not necessarily, just to play devil's advocate, it's not necessarily like something so deep where I'm like sharing my values and really, with really like coming to a place of higher being and all this stuff. And it's more of just like placating maybe, or just saying what's right, or saying what's going to help the situation, which is, I'm not saying that's a negative thing, but it's interesting for sure, because I guess that's the question on the top of my mind. It's like, how deep are we going when we respond versus reacting? Because in any type of like I'm gonna try not to be judgmental. One second,
Just
let me, let
judge
me,
us. Judge
Well,
us.
let
he
me,
had to, he had
let
to
me.
center. He had to
I had to
recenter
reset. I
himself.
had to reset.
That's the title of today's episode. I'm trying to not be judgmental. We're trying to not be judgmental.
I'm really trying. I guess I guess what I'm trying to say is that like in any kind of new age political identity politics conversation, when I'm responding, am I really sharing my values or am I just saying what is the status quo that's not going to cause a eruption in that conversation? So,
Hmm.
And then
Anybody you want to call out on that? Like, is there a name that you're thinking
no,
of? A certain social
no,
media account? A person?
ah,
Something you can give us that's juicy?
no, I'm not going there.
All right, just checking.
and then, that like calls into question, but what if the actual level-headed response is to erupt that conversation? What if sometimes there are things that need to be dismantled? And I feel like this respond don't react is like a catch-all phrase for like don't be fiery and confrontational with me. And it's like, but you came here. Like, let's not mince the things. And I find this so often. People come into my DMs with their opinions, and then when I give a counter opinion and I'm like, I don't agree with that at all. And they I this earlier this week I was called toxic and a narcissist for doing exactly that. Just saying I disagree to somebody who came and offered me an opinion that I did not ask them for.
I'm sorry for
And
leaving that
so
comment at Yuta.
you have to give Kishore some warning before you make those.
Yeah, it almost came out.
Don't make those comments when Kishore is about to drink something.
That's right. So yeah, and it was incredibly hurtful. And a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, respond, don't react. Take a minute and don't be so heated." And I'm like, "Well, when am I supposed to get heated? When
Hmm.
is the right time? When is it okay for me to get heated with people throwing around words that they don't even mean? Toxic and narcissist?" I was like,
Hmm.
"You have no idea who I am or what I've been through. No idea. Nor did you come to find out." So, my question, it's like I feel prickly when I hear those things like respond, don't react. I'm like, is this just the phrase that means don't make me uncomfortable with your opposition?
Yeah, and I think that also. I mean, I feel like I've been referring back to this a lot here and other places, but just the way the internet has affected our quality and um, experience or concept of conversation and dialogue, where words can are used so cheaply, and that the things you would never say to somebody in their face, something you would never say to someone personally, becomes so easy to just type and then move on. And we think that it doesn't have the same impact, which sometimes typing something has a deeper impact because it stays, it's there, you're reading it again, and it's just there in a chat or in a box or in a somewhere, as opposed to a comment that sometimes we can say in the heat of the moment and then retract or explain or have a dialogue around. But um, when we just put something out there, it's almost kind of like we're just sitting in our couch eating chips, or someone's sitting on the toilet throwing out a toxic narcissist quote, and then they're moving on and not realizing like the gravity of what they're saying, because it's so it's so cheap, and not cheap in the sense of like low grade and immature whatever, but it's cheap in the sense that the currency is so low, you know in order, if you want to say something to somebody, we're in a time where somebody said a joke that wasn't received well and got slapped in the face in public television for that just recently. But we are in a place where it's like, that aside, like there are things, you say something in front of someone, they'll smack you for it, or there, you'd be afraid to say something in person to somebody, but then you just kind of like, throw out a comment right before you flush and then move on. It's just like, yeah, you're gonna get something in response, and we don't realize how we don't we don't think before we say often because we're just so I don't know. I don't have a specific point other than I just think that it's ruined our ability to communicate on a high level. Me,
And
just I'm just gonna share this meme. I'm just gonna hit share and put it on my feed, and it's just like, are you even thinking? Like,
yeah,
who's gonna see this and how it's gonna land? And it's like I'm just sharing and moving on. It's just like we've become desensitized,
yeah. I
insensitive.
I absolutely agree, and I kind of like I wanted to hear if Kishore had one more any more thoughts before I launch into the story because I just realized how I'm going to pull it all.
All I have to say is dismantle society. I like that word. I,
God.
I like, I like that word that Achita used because yesterday I said deconstruction, and what I meant was like not like a total dismantling of society, but specifically language. Like language is so interesting, and I remember I was studying this philosopher when I was in college, and his name is Derrida, and super confusing, and I really don't like it. But his point was basically that language has lost its meaning, and therefore, like we need to actually dismantle language to get back to its origins. And I feel like internet culture, like you're saying, Dayal, has just hastened, it's quickened how language is just like totally deteriorating, and how people are not being I don't even know if pushed is even the right word, how people are not even being like incentivized to like think about language or think about what they're saying or think about how words have like toxic and narcissists have, like do they have a meaning, do they not have a meaning? And so yeah, dismantle.
And that's absolutely right. And I feel like that should kind of be the umbrella for this one is dismantling language because what is it about
Mm,
language, right? And looking at it, like you said, no one is being encouraged to say your words have incredible power.
mm,
And I want to talk about words as weapons. So we left off, Ram is going with Vishwamitra. He is traveling. He needs him for some, Batman type situations, save the world type thing. And they go, and the first thing they do is um, Vishwamitra says, what I have at my disposal I cannot use because I'm doing a fire sacrifice. And in these great sacrifices filled with intention, what they teach you is when you're performing austerity to get something for a goal, the one thing you cannot do is get angry because the anger causes us to lose our intelligence. So he's like, as I'm performing this sacrifice, I can't get angry, which is why I can't kill the demons myself. He's like, otherwise, I would have had no problem, but I cannot get angry. I cannot get riled up and disturbed, which is what we're talking about, right? He's like, I have to be level headed, and no matter the circumstance, I have to continue on with his actual pledge. So he's actually responding. But then he needs someone else because he's like, but I can't keep brooking this insult. Because what these demons would do is they would come and they would defile the sacrifice. And when I say defile, I really mean defile. They had all this mystic power. And a fire sacrifice, like it's a big fire that they've been pouring ghee into for years. And chanting sacred mantras and petitioning celestials and all kinds of things for the good of the earth, actually. So here's people using language and the power of language, mantra, right? This the fact that sound vibration coming from our mouths can deliver the mind. So they're using this in order to benefit the world, not just themselves. Usually these things were to bring prosperity and good abundance to the entire planet. While he's doing this sacrifice, this pledge, he has to respond, not react under any circumstances. And what they would do is these demons would come, and with their mystical powers, they would drop bones on this fire, which is so not allowed. They would drop blood on the fire, which was definitely not allowed. And then, as if it couldn't get worse, they would drop urine and feces. And I was always like, just disembodied poop? Like, dang, that is a bad day at work. Imagine you're just like a Brahmin sage, you go to work, and then there's like you're like, oh no, my God. This is just disgusting. This is disgusting. I can't. Like, and like, I don't even know whose feces it is. Like, who knows? It's disembodied. Anyway, so yeah, So they'd defile the sacrifice, and then finally they would descend on the participants and sometimes eat them because they were literal demons. They ate people. So sometimes they'd eat them, they'd scare them away, they'd ruin their houses, set fire to their huts, all kinds of things. So he's saying, he's like, this is a real problem. But he didn't just say, oh, I'm just going to tolerate. Like, he's like, no, I'm going to get somebody who's going to figure this out because I can't get angry. So he gets wrong. But the first thing he does is he says, I'm going to equip you with all of the celestial weapons. And all of them are activated and released through mantra. These words are weapons, celestial weapons. And once you speak them, they have personified forms. So he teaches them these magical incantations. First, he gives them magical incantations which make them superhumanly strong and make them free from hunger, thirst, and feeling tired. So he says, so that you'll be able to actually perform this service, he equips them with all the protection that they'll need through these mantras, bala and atibala. And then he gives them all the celestial weapons, and all of it happens through sound vibration. Imagine if we could dismantle language and get back to that.
I believe in magic. I just want to make that very clear. And I think whenever you see these shows that are like, the shows that are like saying that like magic is real and it's been lost and there's secret. I'm just like, yes, 100%. Like I 100% believe that magic has been lost, and there's some sort of like we did something wrong in society that led us into this place of not being able to like speak the incantations or speak the magic. And I love how you put that, Achuta, because in reality, when we're talking about mantra, like mantra is a magical tool. It is alchemy. It is like a transformation of the spirit and a transformation of the soul. Someone recently asked me, I was speaking to someone on Instagram, and they were asking me about like my experience with mantra. And I spoke and I spoke and I spoke and I spoke and I told and I told and I told. But at the end of it, I told him, I was just like, you kind of just have to like do it. You just have to do it. You have to experience it because it's something that is beyond explanation with words in a sense. And I think that because, let's see if I can formulate the sentence, because language has gotten so muddied and so degraded. Yes, so degraded. It's like we've lost access to how language can be the key to unlocking higher states of reality, of the soul, of consciousness. And rather than language becomes something that is, toxic, for lack of a better word.
I was just thinking like how maybe the feces was teleported from somewhere else. And like you're talking about someone in the office, like, I got to go to the bathroom. Like, wait, I don't got to go anymore.
And now all of a sudden,
where did it go?
Like when you were in GV and they were saying that they repurpose everything, including like the waste. And I was like, I mean.
That's where it went.
It was teleported and all of a sudden it's fallen on some sacrifice.
Oh no.
But I appreciate what you're saying so much as words as weapons. And I think it just comes to this where I think for me, it just comes to this place of being very thoughtful and intentional, whether it's with mantra or whether it's just in the comments that we leave. I think it was Irenka who posted up here a little bit earlier on the chat. She said, take your time, take a breath before you speak. I was thinking of, even the Four Agreements, that book, Miguel Cervantes, is that his name? Wrote the book?
Don Miguel?
Don Miguel. Miguel Cervantes.
Miguel Cervantes.
He wrote Don Quixote?
He wrote Don Quixote.
He wrote Don Quixote. Don Miguel wrote the Four Agreements. And the first one is be impeccable with your word. And just thinking about how I guess for me, that's just my takeaway. What I'm appreciating is just this being very, whether it's spiritual mantra or, in prayer or meditation or something like that, or whether it's just the way that we communicate, words having this powerful effect. And we take that for granted when it's just so easy to leave a comment when it's so easy to just kind of throw something out there. And so I appreciate you bringing us back to bringing us back to that place.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada said, no matter what the age, even if it's this Kali Yuga, which so much has lost its potency, he says two things never lose their potency: the power of
Mm,
mantras and the power of gems. They never lose their potency, even in Kali Yuga. So it's amazing to look at it. If I'm not feeling it, right? And I know some magical incantations. I've got Gayatri
mm,
mantras and all kinds of things. If I'm not feeling it, it's not the mantra that's lost its potency. Somewhere in
mm,
here, there's a disconnect, right? There's that disconnect, and like you said, I too believe in magic, Kishore. I totally believe in magic. Totally experience. I'm a magical person. and I kind of I've looked at it. I'm like, if the mantras have not lost their potency, there's magic everywhere.
Mm.
But
mm,
our mindset creates this hellish condition that begins to live in our hearts and take over our good intelligence, which would be able to harness and access and release these magical incantations that actually could be used for the benefit of the world. Like Ram learns these mantra weapons, but what is he going to use them for? He
mm.
uses them for establishing righteousness. He uses them for protection. He uses them for these things. And it's so interesting when we think about it. There's so many comedians who are afraid for their jobs, and I'm like, but what are you using your word for? You should be afraid for your job if all you that you've used it is to weaponize people's insecurities and to
Mm,
play on the lowest points in people's lives in order to bring joy to others. What exactly are we doing? This is violent. To think of weaponizing someone's experience to bring joy to other people sounds like demoniac mindset and activity. We are laughing, joking, finding joy at someone else's misery. And is it necessary?
Mm.
mm. That's worse than disembodied feces. I appreciate that a lot because I think that there's this idea that humor, comedy, is inherently offensive. This idea that and it just question does it need to be, um, you know, and especially for me as somebody who's always liking to crack jokes or whatever, but there's this sense of does does something need to be said just because it's funny?
Mm.
Um, and it's almost like can't pass up a good joke, got to put it out there. It's almost like not no, you can let it go, and you find even in the Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction by Rupa Goswami, one of the very, very first, the first words actually is vacho vegam, controlling the urge to speak. And I've heard this word vegam, the Sanskrit word, translated almost like as urge, almost like a push.
Mm.
Like it's like almost like push. Like there's almost kind of like this push is kind of like nudging you out. And it's like, what? No, I'm not going to just like allow myself to just kind of collapse and go with that push. I'm going to restrain and going to use judgment and going to use my my higher intelligence. I don't have to respond. I don't have to, we're using these words, respond, react. I don't have to um, go along with every urge that just comes up just because yeah, this post looks funny and cool, I'm going to share it, or this comment looks cool, I'm going to say it, or that's a joke, it's just funny, and it's like, well, wait, maybe I don't have, maybe I can practice this really, really powerful um practice of vacho vegam, of controlling my speech. And when I think about people, that I really respect and look up to, when I think about people that like I have, who I think in a lot of ways embody maturity, they're always people who are careful with their words. It's never somebody who's just flippant or who's just like throwing things out there for no reason. They're always people who, sure, they have a chance to say something, but they're thoughtful about it. They're considerate. They're very careful and calculated what they say, and it always lands a punch. It always has impact. It always has meaning, and you're always kind of curious what they have to say.
Mm.
And so for myself, as somebody throughout my life who, even as a kid, I'd have teachers pull me aside and be like, "You're a smartass," or like,
Mm.
"You're a smart aleck." I have parents call teachers call my parents, and I have people growing up later on, even as an adult, and et cetera. And it's like it's something that it's part of my personality to be kind of like, you know, quip things out and whatever. But at the same time, I'm always reeling back and kind of working on that dynamic for myself of like, what does it mean to just be Dial who's just kind of throwing stuff out there and making jokes? And what does it mean for me to also be thoughtful about
Mm.
what I say and how I come across and respectful? Because as I grow up and mature as an individual, the people that I really look up to spiritually or even materially, um, I found demonstrate that quality. And so I'm glad you're bringing it up, and it's something important to me as well. Um, and that's the last word because we're out of time. I would love to get some takeaways from you guys, but first I want to hear from Kimberly. What we got that we're taking away. Kimberly's our takeaway queen, and then anything we got from Kishore and Achuta to wrap it up.
Some takeaways today: dismantling language. Our words have incredible power, and that we can speak the magic of words and mantra when we are careful and intentional about what we say.
I thought you were going to
Mm.
say dismantle society, which is Kishore's takeaway.
Um, yes, on that note, my takeaway is um, I'm interested in what the difference is between being what the difference is between being respectful and poised with my words and learning or knowing how to call out something that needs to be called out with respect, because I feel like sometimes there are underlying things that do need to be said, and I feel like it's hard in a society today to say any of that, because when you say anything that is against a status quo, you're immediately labeled as a troublemaker, and so I'm really interested in the power of dialogue and dialectic, and like respectfully being able to disagree with each other and respectfully being able to like come into a dialogue. I feel like that barely exists nowadays, and it's kind of scary,
Mm.
and so I'm interested in what that looks like.
I'm bookmarking that. That's a good one. I'm not gonna forget that for other one. No, we're gonna get here on Monday and be like, what did we talk about on Friday? I don't know.
No. And I'll remember because it leads into kind of what happens next.
Mm.
And it's like this thing, when to hold back and then when to speak or when to do, like how do we, this tug of war a little bit, how do we, and it really comes back to it. And we've talked about this before. Do I have permission? Do I have permission to really express what's really happening here? Or do I just placate? Do I just pander to whatever they think I should say? Um, and I feel like that can only go but so far, because your actions will eventually start speaking otherwise. But I
Mm.
think I think it's going to be really cool and very powerful, and I feel like the Ramayana for me has now become a study in mindfulness.
Mm.
Sri Ram is, if anything, he is mindful about everything. We'll see that. He's so mindful and intentional about every single action. Nothing comes just out of the blue. There you can actually see the build up, and he thinks about things so much, which I think is interesting for someone who's born in like Western Aries thing. I'm like, normally in areas of fire signs, they're not known for their like deep, it's like impulsive, go, 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 go. We got to make things happen. But um, there's something to be said for this archetype of Sri Ram, who's perfect king, really perfect, and the thing that he is the most is mindful. So I'm really eager to explore that more.
Hmm. I I was thinking of a couple things that I'm taking away, but just at the last moment, your words made me think that I'm taking away the question: am I being respectful? Because and to your point, even Kishore, about like dialogue, it's, I don't think we have to agree all the time, and people can disagree, and people have their own opinions. People can share things, but this constant question of am I being respectful, even if I disagree, even if I need to call something out, even if I need to disrupt the system, even if I, whatever it may be, am I being respectful? Is a question that I'm taking away for myself, and so I appreciate you guys bringing that up.
Let's dismantle society respectfully.
That's our actual title for today. That's our tagline of the whole podcast.
Right.
Spirit Matters, dismantling society respectfully.
I saw a shirt and it just said respectfully ... And I was like, that's my shirt. That is my shirt. But really, when we say that, are we actually gonna be respectful? Or it's like, respectfully. And then here I go. Now I get to like tear everything to shreds.
Yeah. Respectfully, I'm going to remove you from power and throw you in prison. Thank you guys all so much for tuning in, for listening. We love you. It's Friday, so we're not going to be on podcast over the weekend. Kishore and I are leading a kirtan training next week. So I'm not exactly sure what we have a schedule in terms of podcast. We're going to be 3 hours behind New York time. So over the weekend, we are going to assess next week's podcast schedule, and then we will let you guys know. So if you're tuning in live, check the Rise platform for updates. If timings need to change or if dates change, if we pause any days, we will let you guys know. But we'll be back soon, and we look forward to spending more time with you in the near future. Until then, be safe, be well, and watch your words. Love you guys.